So 2,395 quarters, $598.75. So in my last video, we talked a little bit about the income that this car wash produces, but in this video, I'm going to make my last collect for the month of August and tally up the August totals for the income and the August totals for the expenses so you can see just how much this car wash makes. First, we're going to start off with the vacuums, and then I'm going to collect all the cash from the bays, and we're going to talk a little bit about car washes along the way. So I purchased this car wash for $425,000 about a year ago, and I put another $80,000 into the renovation. Essentially, it was on a commercial bank loan, so I didn't go with an SBA loan, and I didn't do any owner financing. I actually sold a house, and that's how I acquired the down payment for this. There's many different ways you can go about finding the funds for the down payment on a car wash, and there's many ways to go about acquiring one. You don't have to always go through a bank. You can sometimes negotiate owner finance with the owner, and you can also do an SBA loan, but I didn't go that route simply because the owner wasn't being very honest.
Being that car washes and laundromats are cash businesses, a lot of times what you'll find is owners just don't have the records to provide potential buyers, which can become a problem whenever you're trying to acquire a car wash with an SBA loan. They're going to want tax returns from the current owner. They're going to want any P&Ls that they might have, and most owners just don't have that information. So that's another reason why I didn't go with an SBA loan on this property and went with a standard traditional commercial bank loan. Now, these vacuums were here when I purchased the property. They look a little bit run down, they look a little bit worn, but they work. A couple of them needed a few motors, but motors are $50, $100 a piece. So we went in, we replaced some of the motors and got the vacuums working properly, good suction, customers are okay with them. You know, I could have went in and spent $2,000 per vacuum, replaced all of them, but in reality, they worked. They just needed a couple parts. So you have to think about those kind of things when you're purchasing a property that's run down. Is it worth it for you to go in there and replace all the vacuums? How much extra revenue am I going to gain from replacing each vacuum at $2,000 a pop just to make them look nice and pretty? You have to think about your demographic as well. The area that my car wash is in is between a low income area and a high income area, and probably 70% of my customers are from the low end side of town. So I didn't really think it was in my best interest to go in here and blow out my renovation budget just to make things nice and pretty on the back side of the building, mind you. Instead, I focused a lot of my renovation on the front side of the building, giving everything a nice new facelift and putting as many functions in the bays as possible, because that's actually where you're going to make the bulk of your money, is in the bays. Although vacuums don't cost much to operate, they don't bring in the bulk of the revenue. What you want to do is install functions in the bays that are going to keep people in the bay spending money.
That sucker is full.
One thing that I wasn't able to fit into my renovation budget was air dryers in the bays. Now, those would cost probably about $3,000 to install. That includes labor and the actual dryers themselves, but they could possibly increase my revenue at this car wash another 15% a year, which is pretty substantial when considering that this car wash already does over $250,000 gross a year. That could be another $37,500 on top of my current gross revenue that those air dryers could bring in. But considering they're $3,000 for each bay, and there's 8 bays here, forking out $24,000 just wasn't on the priorities this year.
So at one point after I installed an automatic here, I had talked to some other owners that had self-serve car washes with touchless automatics at their locations, and they basically had free vacuums, and they suggested that simply because you're trying to compete with tunnel washes when you're a self-serve car wash to some extent, if you have an automatic, that is. Self-serve customers are a completely different demographic than people that want to go to a tunnel. But if you have an automatic at your location, you want to try to compete with them, and they all have basically free vacuums. These tunnels do. So it was recommended to me to try free vacuums at one point, but Since I have went free and switched it back, I now track all the income that comes specifically from the vacuums, separate from all the income that comes from the base. And the reason that I don't do free anymore is I'm not in an area that kind of supports this, and my automatic didn't really make up for the loss in revenue from the vacuums. So I didn't boost my sales enough to outweigh the cost of going free vacuums. Hard for me to calculate whether I got any more customers that used my self-serve car wash or my automatic, I guess specifically for the free vacuums. But nonetheless, I switched back and I've been tracking it. And up to this point, it's been about $2,000, $1,500 to $2,000 a month only from the vacuums. Let's go ahead and run the tokens and the coins through my counter and see what we got.
So I'm just going to speed through this here. This is just separating the tokens from the quarters so I can get a count on how many tokens were purchased to use the vacuums and separate them out from the quarters. That doesn't get added to my revenue. That count is actually in the cash in the bill dispenser. What we want to do is just get to the counting of the quarters. So I'm just going to speed through this real quick.
So now that I have the tokens separated from the quarters, which is an extreme pain in the butt. I mean, it's beneficial to have tokens, but it's still a pain in the butt to do all this separating instead of just running all the quarters through the machine and then putting them back in the bill changer. So now I got to go ahead and run all of these quarters. So this is $517 that I'm going to track that went towards the vacuums, because all those tokens came out of the vacuums. So let's go ahead and run these quarters and see how much the vacuums made.
The real downside of a cash business like this is always having to deal with coins and the cash, honestly. At my location, I run about 30% credit, 30% cash, and 30% coin. So no matter what you do in a business like this, even if you are at a location that runs more credit than anything else, you're still going to have to deal with the coin and the cash. So that means coming down to the car wash, collecting all the coin, loading it up, taking it to your local bank. And sometimes banks aren't very easy to work with when it comes to cash and coin. A lot of people ask me how I actually take it to the bank. At some banks, they actually require you to put it in the rolls. At some banks, they require you to actually separate out all the bills and put everything in $100 bundles. Luckily for me, I don't have to do that. However, it's still a huge pain in the butt. Conversely, it actually helps with your taxes every year. So I guess it just depends on what you're willing to deal with. For me personally, I'm tracking every single bit of my income. That way, if I ever decide to sell this thing, I'm not ever having to be questioned by a potential buyer as to the whereabouts of whatever income I'm stating or claiming in order to determine a sale price for this. And in my particular area, these are trading at about 4 times gross. So let's say this makes $200,000 a year. This could potentially be worth $800,000. So you want to be very mindful of how you're tracking your expenses. Are you going to keep this for a long time and it's not a big deal if you track your expenses or not? Or are you looking for some kind of exit strategy? You want to have those things in mind if you're ever going to own a car wash. Again, for me personally, I'm tracking every single bit of my income and my expenses in order to make sure that I give a potential future owner the right numbers when they're determining if they want to purchase this or not. I wouldn't want anybody to run into this situation like I did whenever I was looking to purchase this, pretty much in the dark, having to determine whether the owner was being honest or not.
Yeah, right now I'm having to do this basically every couple days. And the car wash really hasn't been that busy. Not as busy as it was in March, April, and May. It slowed down, I think, due to the heat and people going back to school. But imagine having to do this every couple days, collecting the cash and the coin. Collecting the cash isn't a big deal, but having to get all the coin out of the vaults and separate the tokens and the quarters can be a real huge pain in the butt. And again, I'm not really complaining. Obviously, it's money, and the reason for having to do that is simply because I'm running out of token.
So 2,395 quarters, $598.75. Now let's go collect the bays and get the money out of the hopper and see how well I did this month.
If you stuck around this long, I really appreciate it. If you could go ahead and click that like button and subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. I'm going to be making more content on the car wash. Hopefully these videos will be getting better. But if you stick around to the end, I'm going to tally up the totals for the month of August for the gross revenue and the expenses. It's really hard to make these videos because it actually takes quite a long time to, get all the cash, get all the coin from the vacuums and the bays, which I don't always collect the vacuums. I'll let the vacuums go for about 2 weeks or so before I actually empty those. And then when I do, it just takes a little bit longer than it normally would. The collection from the bays here is probably 4 days worth. We've had some rain and it's been a little bit slow, so I kind of just let these ride for 3 or 4 days. And the collection from the vacuums is about 2 weeks worth. So every 2 weeks I pretty much go in and empty out those vacuums because they don't really normally have a whole bunch of coin in them. Problem is, now that I've went back to paid vacuums, they do suck up a lot of my token, and that actually makes it where I have to empty the bays much more frequently because I'm getting low on tokens much more frequently. So it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword. You probably don't go to many car washes, self-serve car washes in your area that have free vacuums, but it's just something that they do around here. I wish they wouldn't. I wish that all the other car washes in the area charge for vacuums, but a lot of the other nicer, higher end, higher gross revenue car washes with automatics in them just don't charge for their vacuums, which, is nice for the customers. You're not losing a whole bunch of money on the expenses for the electricity for the vacuums, but you're losing the revenue that you would otherwise be getting, at $1 a pop. My vacuums currently right now are $1 for 3 minutes. So, if you can imagine, we do about $2,000 a month for the revenue on the vacuums. That's about $200 or so per vacuum every single month. So that adds up at the end of the year. So we're finally at the quarter counting for the money that came out of the bays. I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the part where I separate the tokens from the quarters. I don't count the tokens that are separated out, so I get some people to ask me if I'm double counting or not. No, I'm not double counting. I do not have quarters that are dispensed from my bill dispenser. I have tokens. I do not count those tokens. I count the cash that is put into the bill changer and exchanged for the token. So we're on the final lap here counting these quarters.
It's all mangled up. This is how your coin jams happen as well. People try to put these messed up quarters in here. They got gunk on them, or they're just chipped up, and they jam up your coin acceptors in your bay. 1,900 quarters. $475. Now the last thing I do here is get my cash out of my bill changer. And that's all she wrote. See, it's pretty empty. That's another reason I had to come by here and collect the cash. Even though it's the end of the month and I'm trying to tally everything up, I'm running out of tokens, because another benefit of tokens is they actually just walk off. Someone will come up here and they'll get $5 worth of tokens, and they might only use $4 worth of those, and then they stuff it in their pocket. So these cost me like 52 cents to actually have made. They're custom tokens, they're high security, so 52 cents. And someone comes in, they put a 5 in, they only use $4 worth of tokens, they take that other token and they toss it out. And I actually end up making money on that. It's called walk-off tokens. So I ordered 2,500 tokens maybe 3 months ago, and I'm down to about 700. So I'm not saying all of those just don't ever get used again, but there's a large percentage of those that don't ever get used again, and you actually make money on those as a car wash owner. So I've got all the coin counted. Now I've got to gather the cash up, take it to my office, and we'll count it up and see how well I did for the month.
Almost forgot the automatic.
So I'm back at my office and we're going to count up all the cash from the bays and the bill changer. My previous total for all the collects I did up until this point for cash and coin is $11,968. So whatever total we get here today, we're going to add to that, and then we're going to add the totals from the credit cards for the automatic and the credit cards that were used in the bays, and that will be my monthly total. So let's go ahead and count this up. So 1,541, and I've got to count these up. These are ones that I just didn't recognize. I'll count those up real quick. So there's 25 here. So 1,541 plus 25, that equals $1,566. So $11,968 plus 1,568 is $13,534. And my credit for the bays, the credit cards used in the bays, I have two separate systems. One of them are NYX readers for the bays, and then it's WorldPay, which is a separate credit card company for the automatic. For the bays, last month's total was $5,696.25. So that's $19,230.25. And now I've got to add the totals for the credit cards that were ran through the automatic. The credit card revenue for the automatic was $1,494. So $19,230.25 plus $1,494 is $20,724.25. But we almost forgot the coin from the vacuums and the coin from the bays. So the coin from the vacuums, if you remember, was $598.75. So $20,724.25 plus $598.75 plus the $475 from the bays. And that gives us a total of $21,798 for the month of August, which is extremely hot and seemed extremely slow. Honestly, halfway through the month, I didn't think that it would be over $20,000 for my gross revenue. And my total expenses for this month are $6,829.32. That includes paying for the utilities. Water bill was about $1,000. The electric bill was about $400, and the gas bill was about $200. That includes my chemical, that includes my repairs, that includes paying someone to come clean every single day, which brings my grand total for my cash flow for the month to
$11,342.19 after my mortgage.
not too bad. But if you stayed this long and you've watched this video, I do appreciate it. Remember, if you could, please click that like button. It would help me out a lot, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is this a lot of revenue for a self-serve car wash? See you on the next one.